Everyone, welcome to Aboa Tech Talk webinar. I would like to remind you that we started recording webinar. It's already, we informed about this. I'm Yagut Allahverdiyeva-Rinne. I'm professor at the University of Turku. Just a minute, I will share my slides first. Yes, welcome to Aboa Tech Talks. Today our topic will be about the water management and sustainability. We have already shared the program with you. I'm Yagut Allahverdiyeva-Rinne, professor at the Molecular Plant Biology Unit, Department of Technology. And I would like to give you a few words about what is Aboa Tech Talks for those who are not aware of this. This is the webinar series which is organized between with 4 different universities in University of Turku. And already about 1.5 years before, this idea came mainly from Johan Bobaka from Åbo Akademi, that we can have this kind of webinar where we can get together, bring together all 4 universities from Turku and also industrial partners relevant to the topic. And main idea is that to discuss new novel technologies and sustainable technologies which are important for the sustainable future. Why we came to this idea? Because our planet is facing major global challenges, which is the climate change, which is the loss of biodiversity, food security, pandemic was part of that problem. And for this one, we need really new technologies, solutions to help overcome these challenges. Main goals of the Aboa Tech Talk is that highlight ongoing research and on sustainable technologies in 4 different universities and stimulate cooperation between the universities. And also we are aiming to boost the knowledge transfer from academia to industry. That's why we have always one member of the representative of the industry. And we are aiming to promote science-based decision. And we are also aiming to attract talented young students to science and technology. And that's why webinar is open for public, and we are hoping to get also school people in this webinar. So working group is from University of Turku. I am the one who is responsible for organization. From Åbo Akademi, Professor Johan Bobaka. From Turku University of Applied Science, at this moment is Kumulainen Martti taking care of organization. From Novia, Otto Langvik, and from I have to mention also that besides 4 universities, we have also Business Turku, which is involved in this organization of this webinar. Business Turku previously was called Turku Science Park, but now it's rebranded. And Paulina Forsman is the one in our working group. So all the webinars are recorded and they are available in Turku Tech Campus. If you go to Turku Tech Campus website, you can Google it, and you go to research part, you will see Aboa Tech Talks webinar series. And program from the last 1 year, 1.5 years, and all the webinars are, you can find their videos. So, and also would like to mention that next webinar will be hosted by Tuas. And now we come back to again to program. Our first speaker is the Peter Österholm from Åbo Akademi. He is a senior lecturer at the Department of Geology and Mineralogy, Åbo Akademi University. He will talk about the groundwater management on boreal farmlands. Okay, now I stop sharing. Peter, you are welcome. Please introduce yourself and floor is yours.
Thank you. You already gave me a nice presentation. So I'm a senior lecturer at the Department of Geology at Åbo Akademi. I have been working quite a lot with farmlands and the management of the groundwater level and looking also at the water quality there. I'll just hide the video panel so I see my own presentation. Okay, so in the boreal zone, what is typical for that is that we have extreme temperature changes. We have cold winters with snow and thaw. We have snow melting in spring. And we have also very warm summers, up to 30 degrees with a lot of evapotranspiration. So this gives us some challenges. It also gives us some opportunities to conduct farming on these lands. So it means that we have wet conditions in spring, usually 2 wet conditions, and also in the late autumn. And we have very dry conditions typically in the summer. So extreme conditions, you could say. Under ideal conditions for growing plants on the soil, you want to have about 50-50 of water and air in the soil pores. So in a farmland, in a clay soil, you have about 70% of the soil is actually empty space, which is filled with either water or air. So 50-50 is the ideal conditions. The soil is quite a good place to grow in. It's storing, among other things, water. And let's say in the summer, you have a groundwater level which is below more than 1 meter deep in the soil. And when we talk about groundwater, we talk about soil pores that are completely filled with water, no air or very little air in them. So they are saturated. And above the groundwater level, we have something we call the capillary fringe. So capillary forces are driving water from the groundwater up into the soil. Could be about 50 centimeters. And this enables the plants to take some of this water from the soil. Here we have about 50-50 water and air in the capillary fringe. So in the summer, we get evaporation from the soil. The sun is shining, it's getting warm. And we also have something we call evapotranspiration. The plant roots are taking up water from the groundwater, from the capillary fringe, and also from quite dry soil. It's taking some of the water for its growth, and some of the water is evaporated from the plants by themselves. So there's a lot of water going out of the soil during the warm summer. And in order to get water into the soil, we of course need to have precipitation. It needs to infiltrate into the soil, and to build up the groundwater level, we need to have a really lot of water in comparison to the evaporation. So if we have percolation, then the water is actually reaching all the way into the groundwater zone, and this will not happen in the summer. It's usually too dry in the summer. If you look at the hydrological cycle in the boreal zone, in the winter, we tend to get snow accumulation on the surface. So we don't have precipitation infiltrating into the soil, and we also usually have a thaw. So the water in the topsoil is frozen. So it prevents water from infiltrating into the groundwater. So we actually have quite low groundwater levels in wintertime in farmlands in boreal zones. Then when it gets warmer, the snow is melting, the thaw is melting away. You enable infiltration and also percolation. You have a lot of water that used to be stored in snow, which is suddenly melting and percolating into the groundwater level. And we start to get precipitation as rain. So this means that the groundwater level will be rising very fast in the spring. Just in a few weeks, the groundwater will rise from maybe 1.5 meters up all the way to the surface even, and perhaps giving you flood conditions. So it's quite a rapid change in the groundwater zone. And now almost the whole soil is saturated with water. So in order to farm on these lands, you need to have efficient drainage. You need to have about 60 centimeters of dry soil in order to drive with a tractor on this farmland. And also the plant roots need to have some air, as we just mentioned. So efficient drainage is necessary. and this has been a struggle in the history to get these fertile lands dried. They're usually quite waterlogged in lowland areas with clays. So drainage has been a big issue in the past. Now we can ask ourselves, do we already have too much drainage? Because the summers are quite warm, it gets quite dry, and sometimes or quite often the water is the limiting factor for the crop growth. We could say that the more water you have in summer, the more harvest you have. So storing the water in spring, it says winter there, but it should say water. So storing the water in spring is like saving money in the bank. It's very valuable to have in the summer because it will give you better crop growth, and you don't get any extra water in the summer. It's usually too dry. So you want to store this water in spring that you have available then. Don't throw it away. There's also another reason to keep the water in the soil, to keep a high groundwater level. And this is related to water quality. So if you look at the Baltic coast, most of it used to be underwater. In the Littorina Sea, the coastline was in this area here, which we can see on this map. This was 9,000 years ago. So most of our best farmlands were located under the sea, and they were actually formed in the sea. And as you know, that when you have seawater, you have a lot of sulfate in the water, and you also tend to get anoxic conditions on the sea bottom. Under anoxic conditions, the sulfates in the seawater, they reduce into sulfide, and they are accumulated in the sediments on the sea bottom. So you get up to more than 1% of sulfur in these sediments. So you get this black, sulfide-rich, rotten egg-smelling clay soil material, which will later become farmland. We have about 10,000 square kilometers of sulfidic sediments in Finland, and around the Baltic Sea, we are estimating that it's about 20,000 square kilometers. So it's quite a lot, and it's by far the largest occurrence in Europe. And these are not just ugly-smelling sulfide clays. They are also our most valuable farmlands. They cost about 20,000 euros per hectare. They give the best crops that we have. And unfortunately, these sulfides, they cause a problem. Because when you lower the groundwater level, you are also enabling oxygen to penetrate into the soil. The oxygen will react with the sulfide and produce sulfuric acid. So if you had a chemistry class, you remember sulfuric acid is a very strong acid, and the pH goes below 4. It's the most acid soil that you can find in nature, and also called the nastiest soils in the world. We call them, scientifically, we call them acid sulfate soils. The extreme acidity will start to dissolve metals from the minerals in the soil. We have more than 30 metals which are mobilized due to the strong acidity and leached into the drains, and the metal concentrations in the drains, they are about 100 times higher than the background levels in a combination with acidity. So they are very bioavailable, soluble, the most toxic combination that you can get. So these are really a problematic, they give a really big problem for waters. Here we have a real-world example of an acid sulfate soil. Here in the bottom, we have this black, rotten egg-smelling sulfide. It's at a depth of 1.8 meters. This whole profile used to be black, containing this black sulfidic sediment. But due to the groundwater drop to 1.8 meters, it has oxidized. So pH is below 4. A lot of metals are leached from here. So this is actual acid sulfate soil, and this is a potential acid sulfate soil. So if you lower the groundwater level here, you will get actual acid sulfate soils. So by lowering the groundwater level about 10 centimeters here, you will oxidize 10 more centimeters of this soil, and it will release something equaling more than 1,000 years of acid rains. And on top of that, you have a cocktail of toxic metals. So you really don't want to touch this soil if not necessary. This gives us problems in the waters, as said. This is one of the worst case scenarios in the Vaasa region. We have the Laihanjoki River, which is about 500 square kilometers large, and it's leaching about 6 tons of nickel per year, which equals the entire Finnish industry pollution to waters. And this is just one of the rivers. It's one of the worst, but we have a lot of these rivers. So, and we also have not only nickel here, we have 30 other metals. Aluminium is one of the worst examples. So aluminium and other metals are leached out into the sea. Here they're mixed with the alkaline seawater, and here we have aluminium precipitation, this greenish color, and we have a metal accumulation zone reaching something like 15 kilometers from the river mouth out into the sea. So we find a lot of contaminated sediments here from the acid sulfate soil leaching. So we really want to do something about this. One of the most visible damages caused is fish kills. They occur quite often in smaller rivers. Some rivers you don't have any fish anymore, but the really large fish kills occur about every 10 years. And then we have some more hidden damage, like absence of fish populations or hatching is disturbed and so on. But the big fish kills are those that get the most attention, but it's not the only thing. So the lower the groundwater levels, the more sulfide oxidation and the more acidity and metals we get out into the water. So we want to control the groundwater here. Typically, we drain our farmlands with efficient subsurface drain pipes. They are at a depth of about 1 to 1.5 meters. It's a way of conducting modern farming. So we have a pipe in the soil which is leading the water out into the main drain. We have done a lot of experiments on this in, for example, Söderfjärden close to Vaasa. This whole field is former meteorite crater, about 20 square kilometers large, has thousands of kilometers of subsurface drain pipes going out into the Vaasa Bay and further out into the sea. Typically, as I mentioned previously, in winter we have quite low groundwater levels, down to below 1.5 meters. Then when the snow melts, the groundwater goes almost up to the surface, and then it drops quite quickly towards the summer, and in late autumn it can go down to about 2 meters, and we get sulfide oxidation. And you only need to have 60 centimeters of groundwater drop in order to drive a tractor, in order to put in some crops there. So there's a lot of unnecessary oxidation in this soil. We have tried to store the groundwater with something we call control wells. It's a system called controlled subsurface drainage, where we lead the rainwater pipes into a control well, and in the control well, you are able to control the water level. So you can raise or drop the valve of the outgoing water. So if you drop it, the groundwater will drop here. If you raise it, you will store the groundwater. And this can only be done in the spring, because as I said, in the summer, you're not able to get any excess water anymore. So you need to store it, put the regulation on in the spring. One thing that we found a problem with this was that we have a lot of bypass drainage. So even if we have this control here, we have a lot of cracks in the soil. So the water is escaping through a side of this system. So we have tried to install plastic sheets to prevent the bypass. So we have a plastic sheet here. Well, this was a deal breaker. When we started to use this plastic, it really helped to keep the water in there. Here we have the technique. I won't go into details, but it took some time for the entrepreneurs to find a way to get the plastic in the sheet. We can put down about 400 meters in one day, and it costs about €5 per meter. So it's not a really big cost even. In addition to this, we have a problem. Even if we can store the groundwater, we have this strong evapotranspiration. So we have tried also to irrigate the soil in the summer. So we have something we call subsurface irrigation. So normally the water goes in this direction into the control well, but we pump in water into the control well. So it's going backwards and artificially raising the groundwater. So even if we have evapotranspiration, we are able to raise the groundwater level in the summer. if we have a subsurface irrigation system in place. And this is a very simple way of doing it. Stefan Östman, a pioneer farmer, he has a pump and he has an extra tank here, so you can keep this pump going for about 24 hours with one tank. He's pumping the water from the main drain here into the control well and raising the groundwater level easily with up to 1 meter in 24 hours. And here it was really important to have this plastic sheet that we developed, because otherwise the water will seep out through the system very fast. In maybe a week, when we installed the plastic, he only needed to irrigate about 2 or 3 times per summer to keep the groundwater level high. And the results, this is from one of the ideal summers. This is 2012. We conducted these studies up till 2022, about a year ago. And in the reference site where we have conventional drainage, the groundwater dropped to the drain pipe level 1.3 meters in mid-June. Where we had controlled drainage, it was really strongly delayed. It took 1 more month for the groundwater level to drop. And where we had subsurface irrigation, the water level was kept at around 1 meter throughout the summer. So there was a really big difference when we had controlled drainage and irrigation and the plastic. In the controlled drainage system, the groundwater level actually dropped. This is until August, but it will continue to drop until about late September. So there was not a really big difference in the end, but it was delayed. The groundwater drop was delayed with about a month with a controlled system, so less oxidation anyway. We have also tried some other systems, like putting a dam in the main river, and this is principle quite simple to do. The main challenge is that you need a permission for every farmer in this field. There were about 100 farmers here, and it took a lot of coffee before all people signed the document that we can put in this dam into this system. And this is also needed in order to store the water in the spring. So you don't want to let all the water from the above catchment leach out into the sea. So if you want to irrigate in the summer, and this will be a big challenge to build ponds and places to store the water in the spring. And I think I predict that this will be something big in the future, also in Finland. And as predicted, the summers are getting warmer and drier, so it's a challenge. It looks like this at least. And this is why we need to have groundwater management. We need to adapt ourselves to the coming climate change. I think there will be a larger demand for water in the summer. We need to store the water. We need to have places where we get the irrigation water for the next summer. This will be a win-win system because we get a better harvest if we have good water balance in the summer. And we also think that it will give us a better water quality because of less oxidation of the sulfides. So, by this, I will say thank you. And if we have time for some questions, I will be happy to answer.
Thank you, Peter. If there is one burning question, we would be happy to take. Audience, please. No hands. Peter, I might be missed. Is it the typical for many places, or it's Vaasa is somehow exceptional in this case in Finland?
Vaasa is the worst. Vaasa area is the worst place in Finland, but we also have them in Turku. We have them in Oulu, and also further south in Finland. But the main problems are that we can see, which are visible, are in the Vaasa region and in the Oulu region on the Finnish side, and then on the Swedish side, I would say that the Luleå, Umeå area are the worst, but there are also places around Stockholm and southern Sweden where we have visible problems with these soils. So all along the coastal zone in the Baltic Sea, we have these sulfides. So.
Would it be planting the trees somehow be useful to regulate the water level?
if we plant trees, I think that will actually lower the groundwater level, because the larger the trees get, the more water they demand, and they will lower the groundwater level. So I actually think that planting trees would maybe not be such a good idea on these soils. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Peter, once again. Actually, we continue this topic. Our next speaker is the Eva Högfors-Rönnholm. She is a project manager at Research and Development section in Vasa, and she will represent Novia University of Applied Science. Please, Eva, she will talk about the precision treatment of acid sulfate soils for protection of waters. Just after Peter, let's see what is Eva's approach.
Thank you. Yeah, so I will talk about our research regarding, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. Our research regarding precision treatment of acid sulfate soils for the protection of waters. And just as Peter mentioned, here is the Ostrobotnia area. Now here. As Peter mentioned, Ostrobotnia is known for its flat landscape, but also fertile farmlands, but also known for the poor quality of the watercourses with acidic and metal-rich waters. So here in this picture, you can see how the smaller ditches and smaller watercourses can look like from time to time. And it's the abundant autumn rains and the melting of the snow in the spring that mobilizes large amounts of acidity and leached metals from these soils. And during these periods, the pH value of the drainage water is below 4 and contains large amounts of metals that are flushed out to the surrounding watercourses. So even though the metal discharge from the Finnish industry have significantly decreased since the 1980s, the water quality of the Ostrobotnian watercourses have not improved, but they continue to exceed the environmental quality standards for instance, cadmium and nickel. And this is because of the metal release from the acid sulfate soils in the area. And as Peter also mentioned, one of the biggest problems with the poor state of water quality in rivers is that it has a negative impact on fish stocks in the area. And this is how a typical boreal acid sulfate soil on the west coast of Finland looks like in the autumn when the groundwater table is low. And at the bottom, you can see the parent sulfidic sediment as a dense black clay at the bottom of the shaft. And it's predominantly anoxic and stable with a pH value over 8 if it remains under the groundwater table. But if the sulfidic sediment is exposed to atmospheric oxygen during drier periods, the metal sulfides start to oxidize, and this formed transition zone is a very reactive zone that has a steep upward pH gradient from near neutral to acidic. And then on top of the transition zone, we have the oxidized acid sulfate soil zone that is part of the soil that is above the drainage pipes and has matured into a typical clay type acid sulfate soil with a pH value under 4. And then above the acid sulfate soil layer, we have the plow layer that is limed so that the crops can grow. But no matter how much lime you mix into the plow layer, the neutralizing effect will never reach down into the acid sulfate soil layer, which will continue to leach out acid and metals. And if you look at the geochemical environment in the sulfidic sediment and up to the acid sulfate soil layer, you can see a sharp pH decrease. And you can also see here in the transition zone, we have the highest concentrations of ferrous iron, leachable sulfur, and also total reduced sulfur. And then you can also notice the presence of water leachable metals in all soil zones, but aluminum, cadmium, copper, and zinc have the highest concentrations in the acid sulfate soil zone and arsenic in the transition zone. And metal sulfide oxidation is a very complex biogeochemical process that involves a series of chemical reactions aided by microbial catalysis. And if we look at the different soil zones or the microbial environment in these zones, they show very different key microbial communities and activities that can be linked back to the geochemistry that I just showed you. And although the microbial environment is very complex in all three zones, overall in the sulfidic sediment, we have species dominating that performs anaerobic metabolic processes such as methanogenesis. And they also can grow via anaerobic energy conservation, including carbon oxidation. And then in the transition zone, we have species or dominating species that performs iron and sulfur oxidation processes. And these are also predominantly acid tolerant or moderate acidophiles. And they're also very well adapted to metal containing environments. And then in the oxidized zone, we have species that are dominating, that are performing different ion cycling processes. And these are also very well adapted to an acidic metal containing environment. And if you are interested in knowing more about the biogeochemical environment in acid sulfate soils, we have published this article, which is very detailed in the Communications Earth and Environment in 2022. And before I start to describe our approach to precision treatment, I will shortly present our experimental field, Riisefladan, where all of our field experiments are taking place. And this experimental field was built in 2011 on land belonging to the Vocational College of Ostrobotnia. And you can see here on the flight map where it is located. Here we have the city center of Vaasa, the city bay of Vaasa, the airport, the Vocational College is located here. And then we have Laihianjoki River that Peter also mentioned. And this area is about 0.5 meter below sea level and was embanked and drained with the help of pumping in the 1950s. And the experimental field itself has been divided into 12 subfields, where each subfield is 1 hectare. And all subfields are surrounded by a plastic film, seen here in red, so that they are completely separated from each other and are also isolated from the surrounding ditches. And the groundwater level in the subfields is regulated with the help of control wells, seen here in blue, and in the outfall ditches with the help of built dams and pumps. And all subfields have been equipped with drainage and regulation of 2 different types. We have a classic drainage system in fields 1 to 9, and then we have a new circulating drainage in fields 10 to 12. And the drainage system is used for subsurface irrigation with or without treatment substances. And the water is pumped via the control wells and drainage pipes to the subfields from the nearby Laihianjoki River. And over the years, different subfields have received different types of treatments, with the exception of fields 2, 4, 7, and 11, which are reference fields and have only received river water. So our approach of precision treatment of acid sulfate soils to prevent acid formation is a technique that we call the PreciChem method, and it is aimed at the very sites where the acidification arises in the soil profile. And to perform the subsurface treatment, we use the existing drainage system. And this technique enables us to treat the most important hydrologically active soil layers as the treatment suspensions spread easily through the cracks when the groundwater table is low. And the treatments that we have been using is ultrafine grained limestone that neutralize already formed acidity. And it also precipitates already dissolved metals. and it inactivates acidophilic microbes that catalyze the oxidation of sulfates. We have also been using an organic material in the form of a fine-grained peat, and this works as an antioxidant by consuming the oxygen before the sulfides are oxidized. It immobilizes dissolved metals and also works as an energy source for microbes that catalyze the reduction of iron and sulfur. And these substances are harmless from an environmental point of view and also compatible with food production. And the goal with these treatments is to maintain these soils in agricultural use while reducing the severe leaching of acid and metals. During a treatment, river water is pumped into a large mixing vessel, as you can see here, this one. And the treatment substance is mixed to the right concentration to be tested. And previously, the treatment substance was poured in by hand at regular intervals, but in 2022, a more automated technique was tested where the treatment substance was fed to a large funnel that had screws in the bottom and then portioned out the treatment substance at an even rate to the mixing vessel. And then the treatment substance is pumped into the control wells and out into the drainage pipes, where it then can spread into the cracks in the soil. And the drainage water from every subfield has been sampled every autumn and spring to follow up the treatment effect. And here in this picture, you can see the sampling equipment that we have when we sample the drainage water from the control wells and the drainage tubes. And pH, redox potential, and conductivity is measured directly in the field. And then we also have been taking samples for acidity and iron and metal analysis. And the bottles here at the bottom of the screen is for the determination of ferrous iron in the drainage water. And these are the results from the spring pH measurements from all subfields during years 2012 to 2023. And the reference fields can be seen in green, and the pH of the drainage water in the reference fields have been around 4 or under 4 the whole time. The pH of the drainage water in the treated subfields have increased with up to 1.5 pH units directly after treatment, but have then slowly decreased. But the pH has never reached down to the level of the reference fields so far. And the effects of the precision treatments can be seen to up to 4 years after treatment, with the immediate effect being a neutralization of the acidic drainage water and up to 90% decrease of aluminium concentrations. And the concentrations of other metals have also decreased. The treatments in 2021 were done by a new injection pipe design, and they did not have the immediate effect as seen as from the previous treatments. And the results from the years 2012 to 2016 have been published in 2019 in Applied Geochemistry. And in order to study the precision treatment effects in more detail, we performed a column experiment with undisturbed soil. And the aim was to study the same treatments that we use in the field, but in laboratory scale and under more controlled conditions that mimic the field conditions as much as possible. And soil cores from the acid sulfate soil layer were used and placed in airtight columns here. And then treatment suspensions were pumped into the columns, and the effect on the drainage water was followed in real time through sampling and analysis. And at the end of the experiment, The soil was sampled from both cracked surfaces and from the inner core clay behind the cracked surfaces for geochemical and microbial analysis. And here in this picture, you can see a split open soil core that has been treated with ultrafine grained lime. And the results from this study has been published in 2023, this year, in Applied Geochemistry and Science of the Total Environment. And the results from the soil sampling showed that the treatment suspensions had a significant effect on the cracked surfaces, but only a minor effect on the inner core clay. And the effect on the cracked surfaces after all treatments could be seen as an increase in pH, but only the combined treatments with lime and peat had an effect on the microbial population or cracked surfaces, with a shift towards more neutrophilic species instead of acidophiles. And the treatment with lime suspension or a combination of lime and peat suspension also increased the pH of the drainage water at the same time as the leaching of metals decreased. And the results from the study led to the conclusion that methods aiming at mitigating the negative environmental effects of acid sulfate soil drainage need to target the cracked surface in the soil. And at the same time, as we continue to investigate which treatment methods give the best and longest effect on both drainage water and soil itself, we also work to bring this so-called Presichem method into more practical use. And the ultimate goal is to include subsurface irrigation with acidity control in the form of the Presichem method into a future management agreement for acid sulfate soils. And here you can see the collaborators, funders, and donors who have helped us build up our research. And the background to our projects, experiment descriptions, results, and publications have been summarized in Swedish, Finnish, and English, and can be found on the webpage presichem.eu. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Eva. Very nice talk and also nice work. The one thing comes to my mind that have you patented this technology?
No, it will be open for everybody.
Okay, good. So is there any questions? Mihail Ubacek from University of Turku, please. Mihail.
Thanks for the very interesting talk. I was wondering, do these soils also in those regions affect the drinking water, if the groundwater is pumped, or if the farmers have wells maybe on their land? Does this in any way affect like the possibility to drink the actual water from the levels?
No, not so far. No. I don't know if Peter can answer this question more or better than me, but
for the big drinking water plants, it doesn't seem to affect the drinking water. We have analyzed this, but if you are in some small rural areas where you have a small well or something, then it could affect people, but not in the large water plants.
Okay, thank you.
More questions? I see one hand, or did I miss it?
Johan.
Okay, Johan.
Yes, thank you for a very, very interesting presentation. And would there be any need for, let's say, continuous monitoring of some compounds, say online monitoring, that one would have some sensors installed all along the year, or how, or are you using this kind of systems?
We don't have sensors yet. Hopefully we will get projects where we can install some kind of sensors also. But we sample every spring and autumn, and for us this has been enough, and they are quite extensive analysis, so we get a lot of data.
Okay, yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Eva.
Thank you.
I think there is no question more. Let's continue with the program. Our next speaker is the Elina Kasfi from University of Turku. She's representing Department of Geography and Geology, and she will talk about water resources under climate and anthropogenic pressures. Eva, please.
Thank you. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, we hear and we see you.
Perfect.
Welcome.
Thank you. This one. And now you see my presentation. Great. So thanks, Yagut, for introducing me. I'm Elina Kasvi from the University of Turku, Department of Geography and Geology. And yeah, it was a bit difficult for me to define the level of detail kind of for this presentation. So I ended up with this pretty wide and general topic, but the resources under climate and anthropogenic pressures. But I will talk to you about my own current research and also a bit more broadly about the upcoming water research at our department. And as Yagut already introduced us and also the previous talks were mentioning this pretty many times, we all know that climate and environmental problems are kind of permanent part of our life. And we are also more and more worried and aware about how the human interventions affect the environment. So this all applies, of course, to water resources as well and the aquatic ecosystems. So this is the kind of wide context of this research, and it's much more than only scientific. And to bring out this kind of wider context, I collected some examples from the news related to this topic to begin with. And first of all, water protection and anthropogenic impacts on our water resources, they are pretty much of a global issue, and not only kind of only that the problems may vary according to the local circumstances, but we know those problems all over the world, and it was actually quite easy to find this news about different freshwater related problems caused by riparian land use and deforestation and sand mining and so on, and also news about freshwaters or peatlands, how they have been restored and how to diminish the nutrient loads were also kind of quite much there. And basically all these issues have consequences to the societies, but they are also most likely caused by human activities. And to understand these issues and these systems and how to respond to those, we need to research which kind of considers the natural physical processes, but also the societies and the society's activities. And that's why we are working with these issues here at the Geography department. Same time, we cannot avoid news on climate change, on our hydrological cycle, and such as increased floods, droughts, and in general unexpected and unconventional hydrological events all over the world. And here is a snapshot that I found what is going on around the world all the time. And so these changes in hydrological cycle are of course affecting the water resources and their usage, or at least it should be affecting its usage. And it has become quite an important research theme to figure out how climate change is actually affecting the freshwater systems and how those negative impacts could be diminished. And these are, of course, varying according to the local circumstances and may have very different impact on the system in different part of the world. And putting these two together, climate change and human activities on aquatic environments, we end up with a need to understand how our water resources respond to these two factors in a way, in order to be able to make wise decisions regarding to the usage of not only the water resources themselves, but also the land areas around them. And then, of course, we need to know how we could protect the waters and aquatic and riparian ecosystems in most sufficient ways also. So this is the wide context of our research here. And kind of as a difference to the first talks, we are not that much working with water quality as such, but more with hydrological, hydraulic, and geomorphologic issues and riparian activities. The approaches, the methodological approaches we are applying take advantage of the digitalization and to say technological revolution have changed the research on water resources and protection quite a bit, at least from the geospatial perspective and GIS data, all the efficient survey technologies and automated data environments and modeling tools have exploded kind of during the past 10 years. And this enables analysis of the spatial phenomenon in higher detail and extent, also temporal extent, and modeling of those phenomena to past and future, and combining the processes of different scales in much higher detail than was possible 10 years ago, for example. And in our research, we combined this digital geospatial data and methods with participatory approaches, where we participate the local stakeholders, and this allows us to consider also the local effects and needs of these issues. To give an example, here is an image of from river changes in satellite images. So here I'm not sure where my mouse is showing. I have two screens open here. So the automatic extractions of river courses in cloud computing environments and tracking their changes is possible to do it all over the world, and this provides us very nice opportunities to study the river channel changes with massive data sets and to detect these kind of large-scale trends over decades, and combining these two, for example, climatological data and participatory mapping data, for example, of this local knowledge gives us very nice kind of insights to the changes of those environments. And I'm briefly presenting now 3 projects in very general levels. They are focusing on these issues, and they are all new projects, so we don't have really results as such, but gives you insight what we are working with during the coming years. I will start with the Horizon 2020 project, Resist, which is a huge EU project. I'm leading the activities here at the University of Turku. This is focusing on nature-based water management. There is 56 partners around Europe, and the aim is to speed up the climate change adaptation and resilience in Europe. The climate change adaptation pathways are tested in 4 leading regions, and one of the leading regions is Southwest Finland. And here in Southwest Finland, we are focusing in water. There are different kind of focus areas in those areas. So we are focusing on water, and especially on nature-based solutions in water retention to reduce both flooding and droughts in this area. And if you are not familiar with the term nature-based solutions, here it means simply kind of natural ways to retain water, such as increasing vegetation or wetlands or something, depending on the area, of course, and instead of using impermeable surfaces and draining the area by pipes or ditches. And here at the University of Turku, we are working on agricultural pilot site in Lieto. And we are there focusing on the promotion of nature-based solutions, those nature-based solutions as possible water management solutions for privately owned land. So mainly for the farmers there in Lieto, the Savijoki catchment. And this actually has quite much connections to the previous talks, as we are working on this private farmlands, and which kind of makes it a bit more complex. And the idea is that these nature-based solutions could provide solutions for both the eutrophication of Baltic Sea, as with when retenting the nutrients, and also to the climate change based local problems such as flooding and droughts, which are challenging the agricultural activities. And how we do this, we combine digital modeling and participatory planning with stakeholders. And here you can see images from the study area. So there is the flooding also at times, which is kind of flushing the nutrients from the area. But the main problem, according to the farmers, is the dryness during the summers. In our model, we kind of make those scenarios with different nature-based solutions, and this is and include the climate change effects on those scenarios, and then we can showcase the functionality and impact of the solutions on the water retention. And we use this hydrological catchment model, SWAT, which input layers we can modify then according to our scenarios. And as output, we get, for example, the flow magnitudes and nutrient loads in the streams according to these scenarios. And then we can use these model outputs in participatory planning process to demonstrate the nature-based solutions functionalities to landowners and show different examples and so on. And the assumption in the whole it's the huge project is that by raising the awareness of these climate change adaptation pathways, things will proceed much faster. So this is what we are doing for that here. Going to the next project about the same wide topic in a way. This is my own academic research fellow project, which has started this autumn only, so it's on the very beginning, and I'm focusing here on meandering rivers, which are those sinuous wandering shaped rivers, and their evolution and migration, and the factors controlling that evolution, which can be quite sudden and dramatic, but on the other hand, very slow. And because it's slow, it has been hard to investigate them back in the days, and as there is need for such long-term data. And this is also a problem that the modern technologies and long satellite time series can provide new solutions and opportunities to. And in this study, I focus on both climate and human-induced forcing mechanism on those rivers. And actually, these new technologies and these long time series have induced, in a way, a new wave in this study of meandering rivers, and that's why I got interested in this as well. And during the recent years, they have provided kind of from long time some new insights to this whole system. There has been this very detailed measurements by our group done using modern technologies. But then there are also a lot of examples showing how this long time series of high proportion of rivers around the world have indicated some trends on how those rivers behave. And for example, how vegetation slow down this meander migration. This is important, of course, from also from climate change and deforestation perspectives. They have also showed that warming of the Arctic areas have caused migration rates to slow down. Deforestation has been shown to affect the meandering These are quite interesting and important findings, as researchers have been arguing whether we can actually figure out some single external forces that they actually affect this system. But of course, these kind of new findings, they raise a lot of new questions as well. So this is what my study is about, and the main goal is to increase this understanding how the climatological and anthropogenic factors actually affect this river meandering, and we will be linking very high resolution field measurements that we do in our group to this reed scale satellite data and this automated processing environments. And there are we are working on different parts of the world. They are kind of all representing different anthropogenic activities or different climatological changes. So these Finnish study sites in northern Finland, they represent natural state rivers in rapidly changing climate. And then we have Upper Yellow River in China, which is a big meandering river with very dynamic and high erosional rates, and quite intensively studied as well. We have Zimbabwe River in Tanzania, which is humid, and there is very uncontrolled urbanization on the catchment. So there is focus is on the societal effects of the river geometries, and also in Cher River, France, we are there is a kind of it's so highly populated area that the river has actually stabilized under the human forcing, and as a result of these different areas as case studies, we are expecting some new insights on how the climate and human forcing actually affect or disturb the meander evolution in these different case areas. And as we have these good local collaborators from these universities, we will organize some kind of stakeholder meetings also on these study areas to better understand the challenges and there at these locations. And of course, then also distribute the results to the communities as we get them. But we hope to find both local and global trends, and we hope to see both short-term behavior and long-term trends also on these areas. And very quickly, if I still have time, I can present you this brand new thingy. We have this digital waters flagship DIVA, which our department is part of, and it's starting from the beginning of next year. We have defined our mission that calling as form, facilitate and foster new generation of the water sector, and enabling a transition towards a digital representation of real world water system. And this digital twin is kind of somehow connecting all the activities of this DIVA. And the partners are University of Oulu, Aalto, FGI, and Finnish Meteorological Institute and Syke. And of course, we have a lot of connections to companies, ministries, and local level actors. But the main activities DIVA will carry out are combining basically all the digital observations, modeling, and services to support water management in real time and long term. We will have these super sites, which we will build the digital twins, which will represent this kind of tools for inclusive decision making, and this will hopefully then lead to digital transition in the analysis of water cycle and leading to optimum sustainable solutions for water usage and management. And this will also, of course, then mean that there will be interesting PhD positions open soon, and other positions as well. So for this audience, I can a little bit commerce also this flagship from that perspective. So it's and all kind of collaboration opportunities, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Elina. Nice talk, and it seems that this year was very successful for you. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Congratulations with flagship. It's nice to see that Turku University is part of that. Maybe one of the leading ones, I understood.
Yeah, we are that kind of wise leaders. Yeah.
I have a very general question with flagships, that you have many partners, the academic partners. It was not anyhow criticized that you are talking about the umbrella organization, but they are spread all over Finland. Was it accepted well by the evaluators?
Sorry, no, I didn't.
I mean, you have Åbo and Turku University. It is spread all over Finland.
Yeah.
It's not a challenge for flagship as it is.
Well, I don't know if we got any criticism of that, but I think the key is that we have worked with these people for a very long time. So we have established this cooperation. Yeah, so it's
you
kind
have a
of
lot of modeling also than those things more than lab. So is there any questions from auditorium? We can take one question. It seems no, Eva, just one quick answer I would expect. Is there specific project which really studies bioeconomy, effect of the bioeconomy, like let's say forestry on water management? Just only focusing to one, not general.
Not that I know, but yeah.
All right. Okay.
Good idea, though. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we go with our next speaker. Next speaker is again from University of Turku, Sema Sirin. She is a senior researcher in molecular plant biology unit, where I am also part, Department of Life Technologies. And Sema will talk about the microalgae mediated by remediation of greenhouse effluents and nutrient recovery. So, Elina, if you stop sharing.
Hi, Yagut.
Yes, welcome, Sema.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see your screen. If you use the full screen, now it is not. Okay, now it's fine.
Okay. As Yagut mentioned, today I would like to talk about bioremediation of greenhouse effluents by microalgae to recover the nutrients, but also I will talk about what we are doing with this microalgae then as application. And as Yagut mentioned, I'm from University of Turku and from Department of Life Technologies. Actually, previous talks really nicely mentioned about the problem in the last case that we started to hear about water scarcity, water deficit, water stress, drought, floods. So I think I will skip this part and I will say that yes, water is essential, the essence of the life. But as previous talks also mentioned, we are seeing this water stress, water scarcity is increasing day by day, even we are aware of the problem. And then if you take a look to water stress in highest in which areas, for example, this is a projection for the 2040, and you can see that mostly the water stress is highest in the areas where agriculture is mostly the main activity for the economy. And as you can see, even for the Finland, which we are known as thousands of lakes country, and we mentioned about like all water and how it is important, but still in Finland we have low to medium water stress projection in 2040. And then when we take a look, we know that agriculture consumes more water than any other sources and wastes much of that through inefficiencies. Actually, it is already listed for years from the EU and then the authorities. And then agriculture is one of the main water pollution reason in the region. But when we take a look in detail, what is really affecting, what is the main source of this water pollution, we are seeing that 80% of this water solution to the groundwater bodies are caused by the nitrate. And you know that nitrate is one of the chemical that comes from the fertilizers. And then as you can see, it is followed by the pesticide, again, another agricultural chemical, and then continues with ammonium. And ammonium, of course, not only coming from the agriculture, but partly, yes, because we know that also there are ammonium fertilizers. So if we take a look to the problem of the water pollution, we know that agriculture is one of the main problem, main source causing this problem. And also previous talks mentioned about a little bit about this problem, but Baltic Sea for a while known as the most polluted sea in Europe. When we take a deep look into the projections, actually, Finland is not in the worst case scenario. However, in the Baltic Sea, every year we are hearing about algae blooms. And then also it is not, the news that we are hearing is not decreasing. And the numbers, if we take a look year by year, not changing that much, at least I can say that from 2019. When we take a look to the water pollution in the Baltic Sea, we can see that 46% of the nitrogen inputs to the rivers caused by the agricultural wastewaters. And then also 35% of the total load of the phosphorus also comes from the agricultural wastewaters. So actually what it says to us, we have a problem, we know the reason, and then we need to find a solution to this problem to deal with, because with the increasing world population and then also increasing demand of the food, more urbanization, this problem is not gonna also decline by the years as we can guess. And we know the problem, but what the policy says, what the legislation does in that manner. Let's take a look. A policy actually already put levels for the nutrient rejections to the rivers, to the water bodies. But in any ways, because of the agriculture is the problem, better water management is needed. And then also a better legal limitations needed to deal with this water pollution problem in the water bodies. So we know about the good water management, but how we will do it? And then also with the increasing population and also with the food demand, we need to find a better, sustainable and more profitable horticultural model. By the time previous talks talk about soil, and now I will talk about the soilless farming. And then what is the advantages? Because in the last years, this is a very trendy farming model we talk about, and mostly the farmers also applied for their crop yields. So soilless farming is, as you can understand, without soil, and then it uses the optimal space. And then since there is no soil also, you can use the optimal nutrient, as a result, fertilizer, nitrogen and phosphorus. And then since there is no soil, also you can use less water, which gives a better water management to you. And then also, since there is no soil, and then it is a mostly automatic system, let's say like that, you are making the crop growth in a control environment, which gives also, as a result, higher crop yields. And then, since there is no soil, there is no pest problem, so you don't need to use that much pesticides, so no soil disease and no soil pollution also. Of course, it needs a higher capital investment, but by the time this crop yields and quality most probably will cover this high capital investment. Okay, but after these advantages, do we have some problems about it? Why then we have this problem if this soilless farming is that much trendy, and then even it is giving that much advantages, why we have the nutrient problem then? Because these soilless farms, after a while, they don't want to recirculate their irrigation water. Farmers are avoiding to recirculate it to have higher crop yields. Therefore, this water is discharged to the environment, which causes the agricultural problem, as we mentioned. So from the start of this problem, we and also the ReLM project gave a solution to this problem using this wastewater coming from the agriculture, from the greenhouses, mostly the soilless greenhouses, turn into the value by microalgae, with bioremediating the water with microalgae, turning into the valuable biomass, and make it applicable in all of the European countries. And then combining it with a continuous microalgae production, because we should think about that greenhouses are producing year-round also crops to feed the population. So every day we are having a discharging greenhouse effluent water. So continuous microalgae production, using the discharging water from the greenhouses, using this water for the growth of the algae, at the end having a clean water, but also a valuable biomass, and then using this biomass for further applications. We have a project, ReLM, started 1.5 years ago, and the total duration is 4 months, and then the total budget is 9 million we got from the EU Commission. And consortium is coordinated by Necton. It is an innovation action project, so coordinated by a company. And then we have 16 partner organizations in this consortium. I don't want to get into that much details about the partner organizations, but please go and check relmalgae.eu for more info about the project. Let's talk about the concept. What we would like to do, as I mentioned, we would like to get the drainage water, greenhouse effluent from the greenhouses, uses this nutrient-rich, which includes nitrogen and phosphorus, to needed for the growth of the microalgae. Decentralized production facilities close to the greenhouses. It will give us a low-cost biomass because we are using the greenhouse facilities to grow the algae. It is already there, the facilities. And then also the greenhouse effluents, which they are discharging to the environment or to the municipalities, wastewater treatments, but we are using it. And we would like to do an automatic operation to make the low labor cost, let's say like that. And then with this decentralized production facilities, we would like to forward this produced biomass to a centralized processing unit, in a biorefinery concept, making aquaculture and agriculture products within the RLM concept. But of course, you can do even more as biogas, etc., in the biorefinery concept. So the key is in here with a decentralized production facilities, making centralized processing of the biomass, and then giving a revenue to the greenhouse farmers with the biomass, selling the biomass, but also giving them a green wastewater treatment solution. Okay, this I mentioned about we started 1.5 years ago to this EU project, but actually at University of Turku, it is not a new story. We have started it in 2017 with the North Aqua Consortium, funded by Northforce, and two of the research lines, wastewater treatment and algal refinery, was the start of this microalgae remediation project for the greenhouse effluents. We started with the bioremediation, and then we produced the biomass, and then for the applications, we passed to the bioagrochemicals in North Aqua concept, and we focus on the biostimulants and biopesticides. Actually, for Finland, it is not a surprise that we are talking about the greenhouse production in this harsh, long winter climate. So there are lots of greenhouse producers producing year-round products. And we started with a cucumber producer's greenhouse effluent, and it is a hydroponic one, which means soilless. So we take a look to this drainage water, and we saw that water is really less turbid, which means that let us to penetrate the light to grow the algae. And then also when we take a look, we saw that it is really nutrient rich from the nitrogen and phosphorus point of view. However, because of some fungi problems, or depending on the stage of the crop, farmers, they don't want to use this water as a recycling irrigation water. So we use this water to grow our algae in a tubular photobioreactor, and then also using the LED lights that the farmers use to grow their products also. Because now also not only the halogen lamps, but also the LED lights are farmers' choice to grow their crops. We have done our experiments, and then we have reached really promising results, even with this really nutrient-rich, high concentration phosphorus and nitrogen levels. As you can see on the right side of the slide, we have started with really low microalgae biomass, and at the end we have reached till to 4 or 6, depending on the season, microalgae biomass concentration in 1 liter, but also we have reached 100% nitrogen and phosphorus removal. This gives us really a starting step for the RLM project, because this is a batch process, which means in a period of time we are remediating the water. However, if I'm gonna do it every day with the discharging water of the greenhouses, then I can produce my biomass, but also discharge a clean water to the environment. You can find all the details of these studies in the articles that listed in here. And then, yes, we cleaned the greenhouse effluent that we got from the hydroponic greenhouses. We produced our biomass, but what we are gonna do with this biomass then? In the pipeline, we thought about the biorefinery concept, and first we did a methodology to check if our biomass is possible to use as a biostimulant. We would like to create a in situ solution for the greenhouse growers. Actually, from greenhouse to the greenhouse, we would like to make the problem to a solution we would like to make our project. So first we screened North Aqua culture collection strains. Then we set our methods for getting the valuable bioproducts from the algae. And then we did a pipeline consisting of 2 bioassays to check if this microalgae is okay, for instance, in a greenhouse for the lettuce growth. So we have a methodology, and also we saw from our results in Çonçak et al. That microalgae is promising candidates for biostimulants. Not only for the biostimulants, but also biopesticides, we took a look. And then again, we screened North aquaculture collection strains. And from these strain collections, we saw really promising candidates for applications of the biopesticides. And we tried with different pathogens, actually. And these plant pathogens were chosen according to the greenhouse growers' problematic pathogens that they have faced while they are growing their crops. We have done our pipeline again for the studies, and then we saw that more than 1/3 of the strains are promising at least for one of the plant pathogens. And we have done our methodology, and then also not only in vitro, but we try to make also with the strawberry plant a test if we are successful to reduce this biopest effect with our microalgae extract. And it also gives us a really positive result, and all these results are published at Yokel et al. At Journal of Applied Ecology. I mentioned about what we have done in the North Aqua, which is ended in 2022. But what we are doing now with the ReLM? Now with the ReLM, with the results that we have set already with the North Aqua, we are going now for a bigger production scale, and then we are aiming a continuous microalgae production. Now we have a validation unit for the project, and then first we are having a prototype, an inoculum reactor in the botanical garden of the University of Turku in a fully controlled compartment, which is mimicking the greenhouse conditions that the farmers are using. But also now we have a 1 meter cubic scale production unit, validation unit for the ReLM, which we are aiming to produce the algae to ease the scale up to hectares of the microalgae production in the ReLM project, because ReLM project aims to make it in all over the Europe, which means not only for the southern countries, which they are known as one of the best climate to grow the algae, but also for the northern countries in the Europe, as Finland, Netherlands, gives the possibility to grow the algae using the greenhouse environment. The first study is already done, and then our reactor is an automatic system, as I mentioned, which means that daily we can control the algae in detail. What is the pH of the algae that we are growing? What is the state of the algae that we are growing? They are happily producing the biomass. And then also we are checking with the nutrient that we are feeding to the algae if we are successfully removing nitrogen and phosphorus. First trials show that the results are promising, as in the smaller volumes of the production, and then even it is stable since we are in the greenhouse environment in different seasons, which is really, really promising. And these results hopefully will be in a paper in next year. So the promising results already showed also that phosphorus removed, nitrogen removed, as in previous experiments. But now the challenge is making it in continuous system, which means daily how we will be efficient to remove those nutrients. These studies that I mentioned, done by the cucumber producers effluent. However,
we have to a little bit wrap up.
Okay, and then now not only for the cucumber, we also have we are working for the tomato, which is also a soilless effluent, but also now we would like to take a look to water with this produced with the soil from a berry producer, which means the turbidity most probably will be the problem, not only the nitrogen and phosphorus. Primary results already done, and then the results are promising as the cucumber, and hopefully we will take a look also in bigger scale how the things are going, because cucumber, tomato, and berries are the most popular and mostly produced crops in all over the Finland, especially in the greenhouses. Of course, this is a group study. I would like to thank all to phytomicrobes research team and especially the people who take a part in the all publications, but the most, of course, the funding agencies, and also to Yagut, who is our team leader. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sama. I think we have to go with the next speaker, and then we can come back also questions to Sama at the end, just to try to keep the schedule. So our next speaker is the Matthias Scheinin. He is a representative of Pro-Littoral Association. He's a PhD and he is a research and development leader there. And he has, if I understood well, he has also good connections and collaboration with us. And he will talk about the persistent hotspots of carbon dioxide and methane in coastal nearshore environments. So Matthias, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. And as it was already mentioned, I'm not representing any of the organizations that are part of this network, but we do have close collaboration in particular with Emil Nyman from the Turku University of Applied Sciences. And since we work with similar topics, he came with the idea that I could actually talk about this because he didn't have the possibility to give a corresponding, not a similar, but a corresponding talk himself. I'll just share my screen and okay. Can you see the presentation?
Not yet. We just the green bottom down share screen should work.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Now. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Now you should be.
Now we see also some folders. So if you choose your, I can see behind your presentation. If you put the presentation mode, it will work, I think.
Yes. Now you can see it.
We see. If you put the now full screen.
And then the presentation mode.
Great.
Yes. Okay. So thank you. So I'll be talking about, or I could actually move on to the next slide already. So I would quickly go through the contents, the main contents of this talk, so that it would be easier for the audience to hang on. So I'll be talking a little bit about the background first, which is the connection between water management and climate sustainability, and a little bit more about the role of organic enrichment, which is also often referred to as eutrophication in coastal waters, and what sort of a role that plays in global carbon cycling. Then I'll put a little bit of focus on the methods part. In particular, I'll be talking about a mobile flow-through system that we use, and in this particular case to determine scales of spatial temporal variation in a biogeochemically very, very complex environment. And then go through the basically results and discussion at the same time, first talking about what sort of spatial temporal variability we can see or observe in the coastal environment when it comes to greenhouse gases, and in this case those would be methane and carbon dioxide, as well as those greenhouse gas fluxes between the atmosphere and surface waters. And I'll move on to the drivers, the background drivers of these partial pressures that we detect in the surface waters, and we'll focus on both allochthonous and autochthonous organic matter, and also, of course, as it has been also in the other talks mentioned, since we are on the approximately the 60th latitude, also on seasonal and diurnal trends. And then I will wrap it up by mentioning a few words about hotspots of carbon dioxide and methane in the coastal environment, and then move on to the implications. And to start out with, I think the whole focus will be on high resolution and high coverage data. I try to motivate why it's so relevant in this bathymetrically and biogeochemically complex coastal environment. The rest of the slide is actually about what we do as an organization. I won't be talking about our organization, Pro Litore Association, more than this, but I wanted to mention that we work with both basic and applied research. And today's talk will be about a particular article and about basic research in that sense. But what we will also do is that we really want to take or apply these results that we get in our basic research to very concrete environmental management work. So as I mentioned, coastal waters are considered highly important for carbon cycling globally. And these scales of spatial variability in coastal biogeochemical processes, they really do influence carbon budgets from local to global scales. And according to current estimates, inadequate characterization of coastal spatial variability can introduce errors up to 60 or 70% when it comes to regional methane and carbon dioxide models. And the view I'll be presenting today is kind of like contrary to the conventional view. I guess all of you have heard about these different climate change scenarios, and especially for the area where we live in, according to any scenario, precipitation should be increasing, which would mean that there would be increased inputs of organic matter and nutrients into the sea and also into lakes and other fresh waters. And that will then, or the scenario is that will worsen the eutrophication development. We kind of have, or at least in this particular study, we have an opposite view on this. Not opposite, I mean we agree with this, but what we are looking at is mainly how this both nutrient and or the loading of terrestrial nutrients and organic matter into the sea, how they in turn are influencing the climate. And a few words about the methods. So in this particular study, actually the study that's referred to in this picture, it's another one, I'm not talking about it, I just picked the map from there, but the study area is the same. So we have been doing these high coverage, high resolution field surveys using a mobile flow-through system. And you can see the survey transect in the picture, it's marked with black, and the total length of this transect is 830 kilometers. It tends to take 4 consecutive days to drive through the transect, and during any observation occasion or survey occasion, which we do usually once a month, we get about 25,000 observation points. And here I've also listed the sensors that we're using. Obviously, it would be impossible to list all the variables that we are measuring because many variables can be reliably calculated based on what we measure with these sensors. In today's talk, I'll be focusing mainly on chlorophyll A, FDOM, which is fluorescent dissolved organic matter, and water conductivity, temperature, and then of course these methane and carbon dioxide partial pressures. And also along this transect, or as a part of our mobile measurement system, we are recording air pressure and a bunch of other weather-related variables. For today's presentation, the most relevant one is air pressure. And then for the analysis, we are also using some open source data. And just a quick look at how the system looks like in real life. So it's connected on a relatively small boat, about 6 meters in length. We actually have two parallel systems. I'll only be talking about the flow-through system. That one we use for collecting data from surface waters. And then we have a parallel system with a similar set of sensors that we can also use for vertical profiling. But since we are, in this case in particular, interested in this interface between the atmosphere and the sea, the surface waters, we also do the measurements there using a flow-through system. And so just quickly to go through how the system works, we have in the rear of the boat, there is a water intake pipe, which is leading or there's a pump in the system, so the water is not coming in by itself. You can see on the right-hand side, you can see the pump over here. And from the pump, the water is led further to a so-called debubbler because we want to get rid of the bubbles, because most of our sensors are optical and membrane-based. And here you can also see some of the sensors. There is an XO2 multi-parameter sonde. Here you can see a carbon dioxide partial pressure sensor. And here is our methane sensor. So to the first results, and as I already mentioned in the beginning, coastal waters, I mean, whatever you measure, the most characteristic feature about coastal waters is that they are really, really complex, and the level of spatial variability is really high. And that has to do with the complex bathymetry of this area. And as our first result, I would like to highlight that as you can also see in the picture, although this is interpolated for the whole area, so it's kind of like evening out all the small scale differences, but you can still see quite well that carbon dioxide partial pressures over here, this is just a random occasion that I picked for the sake of visualization, but this would be repeated during any of the sampling occasions. So you can see that we have really huge spatial variation in the partial pressures of carbon dioxide. And for methane, we can also see similar patterns. The patches are in different places, so this carbon dioxide and methane are not at least at the spatial dimension connected with each other. What's especially noteworthy is that we were measuring really, really low partial pressures at some locations, but then extremely high ones as well. And both of these maxima, I mean, both for PCH4, the partial pressure of methane, and the partial pressure of carbon dioxide, they exceed those that have been previously observed for surface waters in the coastal Baltic Sea by an order of magnitude, while the averages that we have been measuring are well within the range reported also for these other systems. And then what was really characteristic for this descriptive part was also that this spatial variation for both PCH4 and PCO2 was during each one of these 9 sampling occasions, it was several orders of magnitude. Then quickly to the fluxes. I'm not presenting them on maps, but as a table. And I would basically like to repeat the same points that I already made, which are that focus should really be put on not only on spatial variation, but also on temporal variation. And when I talk about temporal variation, I mainly refer to seasonal variation. There are, of course, other scales of temporal variation, such as diurnal variation, and I'll be soon talking more about it. Here, I've also wanted to translate the fluxes. I mean, normally they are reported in millimoles per square meter per day, but in some occasions it's maybe more convenient to view them as grams, because that's maybe more comparable with some other sources of information. And if we have the time, I actually hope that you will come up with some interesting questions regarding the magnitude of these fluxes and what they mean in terms of, for instance, a national carbon budget. So now I've already been talking about this huge variation, and what we specifically wanted to find answers to was that what's actually causing, or what could be the drivers of this huge variation, especially huge spatial variation that we see in the partial pressures of methane and carbon dioxide in the coastal waters. And if we first have a look at the carbon dioxide partial pressures, they are presented here with the red line. So the most characteristic feature is that when we associate them with alloctonous organic matter, which we have been using this FDOM, or fluorescent dissolved organic matter, as a proxy, we can see that when the concentrations start exceeding about 30 units, that would be QSU, then we see a very steep rise also in the partial pressures of carbon dioxide. And as could be expected, our other proxy that we used in this study, chlorophyll A, which is a very conventional proxy for autochthonous organic matter. So we see an opposite relationship, especially after about 8 micrograms per liter, chlorophyll A, or increasing chlorophyll A concentrations, are starting to have a negative impact, although this is a correlation, but a negative correlation with carbon dioxide partial pressures. And what we also can see here is this typical diurnal oscillation, which has to do with respiration, but it's basically insignificant compared with these actual drivers. And then a relatively clear seasonal trend where we can see that the partial pressures of carbon dioxide are lowest in the spring, then they kind of like flatten out during the summer and then increase towards the autumn. And then if we move on to the drivers of partial or methane partial pressures, we can see, or what's maybe most prominent in this material, is that they are really strongly driven by seasonality, which we can see here in the last panel and on the yellow line, that methane partial pressures in coastal surface water really start increasing towards the autumn. And another interesting association, which was of course kind of expected, was that we can see that chlorophyll A concentrations are associated with methane partial pressure, but in an opposite way compared with these partial pressures of carbon dioxide. And this is most likely due to this so-called azotoclastic methane production by these microalgae. And then still a couple of words about these hotspots. So in which regions we can find these hotspots, and hotspots can actually be defined in many ways, but you can think of it as something that's opposed to hot moments. So these locations that you can see here on the map are such where we can see repeatedly disproportionately high PCH4 and PCO2 compared to the surrounding area. And in our analysis, about 1.1% of our sampling points were classified as CH4 hotspots and 1.0% as CO2 hotspots. Then I'll actually move on already to the implications, and I thought it would be nice with a local example. This is not included in the study that I'm presenting here, but these are very recent, actually from mid-October in the archipelago around Turku. So this is something that we have been measuring also elsewhere, not only in this study area that I'm now presenting here. And here we can also see that actually for carbon dioxide in October, the whole area was actually supersaturated with carbon dioxide. And also in this picture, I guess it was more evident in the previous one, but if you still remember what was on it, you can think that this relevant spatial scale to address hotspots of greenhouse gas concentrations in these coastal nearshore environments ranges from tens of meters to kilometers. And this is really something that's indicating the spatial resolution and extent that we need for ecosystem models and process studies for us to be able to incorporate these fluxes, especially these carbon dioxide and methane fluxes in regional carbon budgets and also in global ones. So just some few take-home messages still. So this empirical quantification of both allochthonous and autochthonous organic matter, as well as these both greenhouse gases by spatially extensive high-resolution surveys, is really crucially important for determining coastal carbon budgets, because the spatial variation is simply so high that individual sampling stations, even though you can get high frequency, like temporal high frequency data from individual sampling stations or fixed sampling stations, it's really hard to extrapolate any of this information unless you know quite a lot actually about the spatial variation. And another thing I would like to highlight, especially here, that you hear people often talking about whether these coastal aquatic systems are sinks or sources of carbon dioxide, but they really can be both. First of all, depending on the spatial scale and also temporal scale, and especially on the level of organic enrichment. And then I've also put here, I can also send it to you. The paper I was talking about has not been published yet, but my guess would be that it will be out in a few days now. So we're quite far in the process. So here you can see my collaborator Eero Asmala from the Geological Survey of Finland, and I have been authoring the article that will have the contents that I just presented to you. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm really happy to answer if there are any questions.
Thank you, Matthias. Very nice results and talk. Now, questions from audience. Johan, please, Pobaka.
Yes, thank you very much. This was very interesting to see. I was just wondering, since you also measured conductivity, and which should correlate with the salinity, could you see any correlation between the conductivity and the CO2 or methane?
Especially, thanks, that was a very good question, and this is in particular with the partial pressures of carbon dioxide and conductivity, we see a very high correlation actually. With methane, well, I don't remember the figures, but at least it was a relatively weak correlation. And the thing is actually that this concentrations of this dissolved organic matter and then salinity tend to co-vary quite strongly. And this is basically kind of obvious in that sense, that if we think that this DOM or fluorescent dissolved organic matter, it's also being used as a proxy for terrestrial organic matter. So in practice, we also measure the highest concentrations of dissolved organic matter since we're dealing with these brackish coastal waters. So we're measuring the highest concentrations of this DOM also in the same places where we have the freshest waters, so to say. But the short answer is that yes, we see a strong correlation between salinity and CO2, and not such a strong one between CH4 and salinity.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthias. Now questions also, Sama, if someone has, please, now it's time to. Meanwhile, Matthias, I wanted to ask that, so you are also checking the phycocyanin at the same time?
Yes.
Spectroscopically, how do you have a sensor for that? Or?
We have it's actually called a total algae sensor, and I guess I won't have the time to go through all the details, but we're measuring it in situ, and it's part of this XO2 multi-parameter sonde. So it's actually the same sensor that's measuring both chlorophyll and phycocyanin, but it's switching between really frequently between two wavelengths. So it's like taking turns in between measuring phycocyanin and chlorophyll, but phycocyanin is then in its turn exiting chlorophyll A, so we get a more accurate measure of the total chlorophyll concentration, since we can also include the cyanobacterial component of the phytoplankton community or the microalgal community.
From your, I mean, I know that it's few years before it was a paper telling that photosynthetic microbes are responsible quite large amount of the methane in the water places, and then from your experiments I see that it goes up methane level in October, and at that time I would not expect blooming. So it's somehow not in line with that?
We actually do measure, because these coastal, I mean, these really nearshore environments, they have completely different, or well, yeah, I guess one could say completely different phytoplankton dynamics compared with pelagic areas. So we actually do measure very high chlorophyll concentrations as late as in October, and in particular in these like shallow semi-enclosed embayments that we also had determined as methane hotspots. So I think this is, I mean, although this wasn't a mechanistic study, but if I'm allowed to speculate, I would guess that this acetoclastic methane production by phytoplankton is an important mechanism behind these patterns that we have observed.
Yeah, thank you, Matthias. More questions to Matthias or Sema or other speakers? If not, then I would like to close this session, and I think this is a really excellent platform to know what is going on in Turku region, in different universities and on industrial level or SMEs or so on. So Matthias, particularly meeting you, it was a pleasure, and I think we might have quite much topics to discuss later on. Thank you very much for all the speakers. And next, Peter is there, and Eva is there, and Elina. So thank you once more, Sama. And our next Åbo Tech Talk will be in spring. So you will get again information from us. And have a nice day.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.